I'm going to act as a CEO, which I am, who's very visionary, which I am, where now you come in and say, what does that framework look like? Somebody who's not an operator has a hard time thinking. Like they think, well, I just need a whole bunch of SOPs and I need I need a Notion board that has everything in it, and that's the playbook, and I can step away, right? So, what is that training that you take these operators through? What does that framework look like? Like, what are the pillars that you kind of, preach and teach?
Such a good question. So I look at the operations of a business through actually 6 core pillars. So we can walk them through really, really quick. These pillars are strategy, right? Do we know where the business is going and how we're going to get there? Leadership, that's you, the CEO, and any leadership or management team you have in place. Team, that's the performance of your team, and is your team bringing their highest performance to the table every day? It's communication, like meetings, information flow within the business. Systems, so what you just talked about is literally only one of 6 pillars, right? SOPs, Notion boards, these things are important, but they're literally 1/6 of the operational job that actually exists within the business. And then the last one is data and KPIs. So these are the 6 core pillars that I walk CEOs through, that I break down their business. Like we do a company-wide audit when we start working with a client, and we break their company down into these 6 core pillars and then give them a health score within each pillar so that they understand which are they crushing it in and which are actively bottlenecking them. Because these 6 pillars essentially serve, I think of like the foundations of a house, right? You can build the tallest freaking skyscraper building in the world, but the foundation has to run equally deep for that to be a solid structure. Otherwise, you've got this really, really tall tower and one gust of wind is going to blow the whole thing over. And we see that with businesses, right? Like you can like sell like crazy and scale your agency up to 100K per month, but without any scalable or stable foundation, you have one bad month and you're back down to 20K, right? It's not stable. And so these 6 core pillars are the foundation that sink into the ground and keep your company stable. Losing or missing any one of them creates instability and makes it harder to scale sustainably.
Yeah, I'll share a story on this because I think it's extremely important and highlights this. So this is back in end of 2016, I guess. My daughter was just born, and our agency had 3 months in a row of 150K months, and we'd collected like $450,000. In January, we decided, okay, hey, let's go on a trip. Me, my wife, and my daughter, who's like 5 months old at the time. And finally, I get to celebrate after 18 months of hard grind. Finally, we figured out the acquisition model to get customers consistently. And we were in San Diego, California for 10 days. We stayed at a very nice hotel and all that stuff. And the entire 10 days, my wife and 5-month-old daughter walked up and down the beach by themselves because I was stuck in a dark hotel room, day in, day out, on calls, talking to clients who are kind of pissed off, talking to my team who is like running around like chickens with their heads cut off. It was the worst experience because my wife at the end, like, I was so stressed that like even when we were eating dinner, like she could feel that stress coming through me. And at the end, my wife said, Mikkel, I love you, and I'm happy that like you were able to kind of get this to this stage from a revenue standpoint, but I wish we never went on this trip. And I was like bam, a gut punch of like, man, you work so hard, you do all these things only to realize that like that top level number is it's very superficial if the underlying aspect of like, well, why are you doing this in the first place? Isn't there. And I think that was my biggest first lesson when it came to operations. So tell me from your perspective, what makes a good operator?
Yeah. Dude, I just want to like reflect back to you on that story for a second, because I think it's really, first off, thank you for sharing it. And I think it's really powerful because like at the end of the day, why do we do this crazy thing called entrepreneurship? We do it to take care of our loved ones. We do it to achieve personal freedom and freedom of choice over ourselves and our time. And what I see all the time, what is so heartbreaking to me and why I do this work is for exactly the reason you just said, which is like, we have these reasons over here, and then we build a business that literally takes us further away from those things than we've ever been before. It's the exact opposite of why we did this fucking thing. And the key takeaway I just want the audience to understand is it doesn't have to be that way, right? We tell ourselves that it does. We tell ourselves that our business needs us to work 80-hour weeks. It needs us to hustle. It needs us to, like, this is what we should be doing. But the reality is that it absolutely does not. We just need to learn how to run our business a different way. So to your question around like, what does an operator do? An operator helps you run your business a different way. They are not just a buffer, right? They don't just protect you and your time from the team and from the day-to-day. They do that. But how they do it is by building, I like to think of it as like, instead of being a firefighter, they build a fireproof house. They are a fire preventer. So most entrepreneurs that I know, when they're thinking about hiring in a second command, they're like, I have to deal with all this shit and my clients, my team coming to me all day, every day. So I'm just going to hire in somebody underneath me and then that person can deal with all the shit, right? But that only gets you a fraction of the real value because the shit is still happening and someone still has to deal with it. Versus if you bring in the right operator and you give them the right training, that person understands how to mitigate and reduce the fires that happen, period. They just go away. They just get eliminated. The stupid team questions that you have to answer again and again, they just disappear. They no longer have to happen. And that's a fireproof house. That is the most stable and efficient structure for your business. Because whether your team is wasting your time or your COO's time, they're still wasting someone's time. And it's waste and it's not effective and it's not a good way to run the business. And so the right operator brings the lens and the tools and the systems to the table to just eliminate that day-to-day chaos so that all of that time and energy that gets freed up can be put into growth, can be put towards the needle moving activities. Because let's be honest, let's say that you spend 5 hours a week solving client fires. That's 5 hours of sales calls that you could have been taking. That's 5 hours of marketing campaigns that you could have been optimizing. That's 5 hours of growth that you could have created that you didn't because you were dealing with these client fires. That is very real opportunity cost to your business. That is very real money that has not been generated that could have been. And so that's the real ROI of operations. It's like, it's not just that your life gets better. You're able to grow your business so much faster because you only have to focus on growth and your time is not being wasted by all these things that actually are not driving that much value to the business.
So just going back to that original question then, what, if I'm looking for the right operator, what am I looking for? Like what, like I understand it theoretically, they have to be a firehouse proof builder, like they have to they have to know how to build houses. But actually though, what am I looking for when it comes to, the skill set, the mindset, like, because like you said, most of us think, oh, okay, well, we really am just going to put somebody in place who's under me, who now it creates a barrier between me and my team. But that's not the case. So what am I looking for? What are those traits?
Yeah. So I look for exactly 2 need to haves. Like if you don't have one of these 2 things, they will never be a great operator. If you have both of those things, they have the potential to be. The first one is what I call level 3 thinking. Level 3 thinking is that lens that we've been talking about, right? So the lens essentially is, does this operator look at your business and see it through the lens of systems and inefficiencies? And there's a series of questions that you can ask on a skill assessment in interviews, right? Like this is something that we do is we hire operators and we are stress testing for this specific lens, which is it's like when I give you a pile of shit, do you get excited? And do you know how to clean it up? Because that's just how your brain works, right? You're organizing, you're systemizing, and you're seeing where things could be better and you're plugging holes because you can't not see it that way. That's just who you are. That's what I believe makes for a great operator. Everything that we call operations, the systems and the SOPs and the meetings and all that stuff, that can be taught. Those are just skills that you layer on top of the lens to make for a great operator. I can teach someone the skills. That's what we do in our coaching programs. but I can't teach someone the lens. And so if somebody has it, then they've got the potential, which brings me to the second need to have, which is they have to be driven and growth oriented to learn operations. I can't make somebody want to get better and learn how to build a system. I can't force them to want that. But if they've got the underlying lens and they've got the drive to learn and to grow in that direction, that's somebody I can turn into a great operator one day. If you're missing either of those things, though, it's never going to happen.
That's super powerful, and I think that's where most people they fail, because they basically skip those steps, right? They basically say, I don't even know what the underlying thing should be. It's just like, do you like systems? Have you built systems before, etc. Right? Have you built SOPs? And then it's like, yeah, of course I've built an SOP. I mean, who hasn't?
Right, exactly. This person is detail oriented, pretty organized, and they're competent and they can get shit done. That must be operations, right? No, dude, that's just a competent human being. Like, there's nothing to say that that person's going to be exceptional at operations versus, what we most often see, people will try and pull them out of like client success roles. Sometimes they'll pull them out of sales roles. But what you end up getting is, let's say you had like a bomb client success manager. They were absolutely crushing it. They handled all your client escalations and you're like, perfect. This is my second in command. I should put them in the operations role. Well, now all you've done is you've swapped out a really good client success manager for a mediocre operator, right? You've just paid more to get less versus is that person going to become a better operator? We train client success managers into operations all the time, but because they're a better operator than they were at client success. That's the only time I would make that trade.